Welcome back to Petty Astrology. I'm your host, Kaycee Felton-Lui. We are coming towards the end of eclipse season, and if it's panned out a little bit differently than you thought it might, you are not alone. Virgo season reminds us that even small steps forward are progress. And so it's important to hold on to the things that you're able to do, the ways that you're able to be there for yourself and for other people during this time, especially when the road forward doesn't seem so clear. It's important to remember that what we have is our physical bodies and our relationships and the things right in front of us in the present moment. Virgo season reminds us to stay present because that is where we can be the most helpful. I'll tell you right now, eclipse season on its own is not a time where you should be seeking clarity in the middle of it. Can you have epiphanies? Absolutely. But is everything going to be crystal clear? No, that would be unusual. And these eclipses are in Virgo and Pisces. With that Pisces element, there can be a murkiness. But how you choose to interpret that murkiness is your business. That is within your control. It doesn't have to be the worst thing ever. It doesn't mean that everything is going to go wrong. It does mean that we need to have a little bit more patience. We need to keep our heads as clear as possible because there's going to continue to be a lot going on, and we're not going to be able to get all of the answers we want, all of the clarity we would like right away. It's important that we develop skills that help us keep our head clear, and that's what the solar eclipse in Virgo is helping us do. Today on the podcast, my analysis on what we've learned from eclipse season so far. Then stick around for what you need to know about that essential Virgo eclipse. Our September 2025 eclipse season has been nothing if not eventful. I put out an episode a few weeks ago talking about my predictions for current events, and the overall theme was a lot of leaders vying for control. And there's so many different ways that that can play out. And, we have some hunches based on who's in power now and what they've been up to. And I did predict the death of a global leader. And I talked about this pretty extensively on TikTok because I had a video go viral, and it was partially due to people's backlash about the term global leader that was really rubbing some people the wrong way because there were a lot of people that didn't know who Charlie Kirk was until he was assassinated. There were people that had heard about him and thought he was just some dude with a podcast. And I'm not saying that they don't have a right to be unaware, but if you live in the United States especially, we have a very strong evangelical Christian movement that is deeply embedded in our right-wing political apparatus. And this has been true for decades. I don't remember a time in my life where this was not true, and I am approaching my mid-30s. So even people who didn't know who Charlie Kirk was and that he had millions of followers, mostly in the United States, but also around the globe, or that he specifically targeted college campuses because he felt that they were institutions that are brainwashing the youth of America. And so he would go around and do speaking engagements and debate and, do this whole facade of free speech, meanwhile being a bigot and only defending the free speech of certain people. And I'll let you fill in the blanks on who that would be. But for many reasons, not exactly what it was portrayed to be. He was very much a significant arm of the current Trump administration, the current right-wing movement that has really attached to a kind of anything goes strategy and has done a really good job of communicating their messaging to the people through people like Charlie Kirk. I also talked more about how my background relates to this situation. This was very direct for me, and so I'm still very much processing the events of the last week and a half. But I grew up in an evangelical Christian household, and I went to multiple evangelical Christian schools over the course of my primary education. So I know a lot about these people and how they think and how it works and how too many people underestimate the power that they have. Because it's true, Charlie Kirk did help Trump win this election, and he helped him win previously as well. So he's done a lot of legwork for what we have right now, which is why it was so alarming to see how many people were lamenting the loss of this person who is directly responsible in many ways for creating what we are dealing with right now. This eclipse season has revealed the extent of the right-wing conservative evangelical project in the United States and globally as well, because there were, believe it or not, people around the world mourning this loss, mourning his death, because he did have global reach, even if you don't like that. I don't like it either. But if we don't talk about these things, if we continue sweeping them under the rug and just pushing down the things that we don't want to deal with under the ocean of everything else happening, I don't see us doing very well getting out of this situation. How can you reduce the power and influence of your enemy? And it should be your enemy because they have direct targets on people of color, queer people, trans people especially, immigrants, women. So many of us are impacted by this type of thinking, and it is something that is being strategically spread across the globe. That is the evangelical part of evangelical. They send missionaries around the world to spread these ideas and to meet people's needs, especially in the global south and places that have been harmed by other forms of colonization. And they prey on that to spread their ideas, and ultimately all of this effort, yes, they say that it's for the glory of Jesus Christ, but there is so much money in all of this. And the evangelical Christian movement has done a really good job of driving the politics of this country for a really long time. And that is why we are on the razor's edge of full-blown, outright fascism. I did say that over the course of this eclipse season, there would be a lot of power grabbing and manipulation attempts. And I want to be very clear that what we're seeing with this event is a manipulation attempt, because they were announcing their agenda. They wanted to go to war with anybody on the left right away, before we even knew who the suspect was or if they had a suspect or anything like that. They were ready to go to war. And what might not be clear to people who didn't grow up the way that I did is that we are primed, especially those of us who are children in the evangelical movement, to view ourselves as spiritual warriors. And what that means is that we literally expect persecution. I was actually taught that Christians were persecuted, and that was something that I could expect as a Christian, which is laughable now, given the situation and given what I know now. But this is how indoctrination works. You build a reality for people, and then suddenly you have millions of Christians, not only in the US, but perhaps even elsewhere where this missionary work has been successfully done, believing that Christians are the ultimate target of the government. Especially in the United States, that is a ridiculous idea. And the rest of us will kind of laugh because these ideas are ridiculous. Do you remember the war on Christmas? That is an idea that was talked about seriously with people that I grew up with that are evangelical Christians. They really feel that they are oppressed. So when somebody like Charlie Kirk gets assassinated, this is just going to be more evidence to them of this worldview that they have trained on. The Trump administration has obviously taken this event and run with it to pass off their political agenda, which is something that I said that they would do. They want to have militarized police wherever they want, whenever they want. They want to utilize the military against the American people to keep us in line, to project this idea of law and order, and also to make a lot of money off of building prisons, off of the equipment that's needed to police people en masse like this. This is all an exercise in control. So it really doesn't matter to them what actually happened with the whole Charlie Kirk thing. They are going to use that story for their intentions, which they've already made clear. We didn't even really have to go through the eclipse to know this is what they were going to do. But now we know how. And what I want people to understand is that there are a significant amount of people in the United States that identify with this type of thinking and that believe that they are in a spiritual war and that the United States is a part of that spiritual war. If you've ever read the Bible, none of this shit is in there, by the way. I looked. And yeah, this is just nationalism and white supremacy that has been sold to people through Christianity, which is something that it's been very useful for elsewhere. But we're doing it again because this is how human beings do things, and we've never really addressed this issue. Like I said, none of this stuff just happened overnight. This has been, my whole life. I feel like I've been watching this unfold and wondering how it was going to come to a head. And I think we're kind of at the point where we're seeing a lot of these dominoes starting to fall. This is a group of people that can be very effectively wielded by someone like Donald Trump. And I know that doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't, because it's not logical. But these people view Trump, even if they don't really believe he's a Christian, and I've talked to some of these people because I'm very curious how this type of brain warping works. And they will acknowledge that they don't think that Trump is even really a Christian, but they view him as a vehicle for God's will, as bizarre as that sounds. And they also view America as a country that has God's favor in some sense and that belongs to Christians. They really believe this, even though none of it's biblical. None of it's biblical. The culture of evangelical Christianity in the United States is very strong. And they export that shit elsewhere too. So my point here is that this is a big thing. This is a big elephant in the room that's been there, and this eclipse season has just shone a light on that elephant. Now, with the astrology that we have coming up for the next little while here, I do think that there are going to continue to be a bunch of people that are susceptible to the propaganda. There's a lot of people that don't really understand what is going on. They don't understand the nuances of especially younger people's political beliefs because we don't fall into the red team, blue team thing so easily. And so the Trump administration and its allies are going to lean into this narrative of the shooter being a leftist. And what I believe is about to happen next is pretty much what they have said. They want to use this moment to go after left-leaning organizations in the United States. Now, how successful they're going to be at doing that, I don't know. But I think they're going to do their damnedest, and partly that is because in the United States we've got the Epstein files, we have Gaza, we have Russia threatening to escalate and expand their war. We also have Israel, as predicted, expanding its military activity in the region. I'm concerned about how Israel is going to react to the Samud flotilla, which is on its way to Gaza on a humanitarian mission. What gives me some hope on that one is that about 16 countries so far have said that they will not tolerate an attack on these flotillas. So hopefully Israel knows that the world is watching, especially now that the UN has come out and said that there's evidence of a genocide. I'm hoping that that puts the brakes on whatever they're planning to do, but I also feel that on some level that they're kind of just throwing it all at the wall because nobody is really taking any major actions to stop them. And I actually pulled up Israel's chart for this one, and to be real with you, I am concerned that they could potentially do something really illegal. And they have already been doing illegal shit this whole time. So that concerns me, that I'm looking at this and going, okay, what are they going to do to step this up? But here's what we know. We know that they are on the ground, literally as I'm recording this, invading Gaza, and they plan to be there for months carrying this out. So they're going to do that unless somebody stops them. And there is a serious lack of appetite to get involved because Israel is an extension of the United States. I've said that many times before. And because the United States has too much power, nobody wants to go against the US, especially with one of the most unhinged, podcaster-led organizations we've ever had running this administration. And that's saying a lot, because I'm not a huge fan of our previous presidents either. The more awareness that we can bring to what's happening in Gaza and this flotilla, the better. I think the more attention these things have, the less likely Israel will be to try something knowing that the attention is on them. They're very good at deflecting attention when they want to, and they have a tendency to plan big advances when other big events are happening in the world in the hopes that there's less of a reaction. And I think they've been very successful given how long this has been going on. So whatever is within your power, donating money, sharing campaigns, talking about this, not letting this happen quietly, the better. On the flip side, and this is a good moment to remind you that energy is a spectrum. So when I'm looking at these predictions, it's not like I look at things and just see one possibility. I see a number of possibilities with any astrology. It's just about determining what the most likely possibility is. So it does actually take analytical skills and intuition on top of a lot of research and study. But the other possibility I see for this is that Israel perhaps is the recipient of such an attack. We will really have to see how that pans out. Another thing that I want to draw our attention to is that there have been multiple events in the United States that really appear to be lynchings of Black people in public spaces. And I am concerned given the state of things right now and how anti-immigrant, how racist, how white supremacist things are becoming overtly. And this stuff has always been there, but it's getting a lot louder. And I think that we need to be very careful in protecting ourselves as we move through the world, knowing that that is the state of things. Take self-defense seriously and understand that we're in a political environment where there is a lot of uncertainty, especially if you have to deal with law enforcement of any kind. And we don't always get to control when that happens. So just do your best to prepare for your particular circumstances, and make sure that if you are out and about in the world that you're just alert about where you are, and that if you have some means to defend yourself, that you have a plan in the event that something goes awry. This is not advice just for this eclipse, but I do think that this eclipse is a good time to think about those things, make an actual plan, and take these things seriously, because I think we are about to watch a really intense power grab unfold over the next several months, especially in the United States. But remember, transits are global, and we are seeing versions of these power grabs happening from leaders all over the world. In the United States, the plan is very obviously to stir up certain supporters who are willing to go out and do violence to political enemies on their behalf, and then they rig the legal system to the best of their ability so that that person does not face consequences. And at the same time going after people who they do consider political enemies, so immigrants, trans people, people of color, and leftists, anybody that is on the left. And just remember that these people on the right, they view liberals and leftists, which are actually different things, as the same thing. So I do think that there are important conversations that need to be had in between liberals and leftists, because they are not the same. But we need to also understand that we have a common enemy right now that would love for us to just keep fighting with each other, just the way that we would love for the right wing to keep fighting with each other. In the United States, the center, which is liberals, is considered the far left by these people. It's not actually, but for all intents and purposes, I think it's a good idea for especially liberals to stop picking on leftists and realize that maybe we had some points about all of these Nazis and what they were going to do and what they've been doing, and maybe we have some good ideas about resisting them instead of, inviting them onto our campaign stages. I don't know, just throwing ideas out, man. We need to take our personal protection and our community protection very seriously, because these people really do view themselves as being at war, and they're going to use whatever they can to advance that narrative. I have been talking for a very long time about all of our needs to be integrated within our local communities. And I think online communities are great as well, but they're not a substitute for in-person communities where you live, because when things like fascism come knocking at your door, it's a little bit harder for your internet friends to show up and support you quickly, which is what you need in that situation. So I am going to say it once again. This is a wonderful time to strengthen your community connections, to make those plans, not just with yourself, but with the people around you. We have to actively resist fascism, no matter if we're in the United States or elsewhere, because if we don't do it, if you're at an earlier stage than we are here in the United States, if you don't do it, you end up where we are. And now we have to deal with this shit. Nobody wants to do this, I understand that, but we also don't want to live under fascism. And we need to remind people that nobody really wants that their vision for the future is hideous and repulsive and not something that anybody should be looking to build. We actually have the advantage on that one. So instead of trying to change people's minds, people that are perhaps in some sort of religious psychosis or that are just really committed bigots, don't waste your time on those people. Find the people that you can work with. Even if you don't 100% agree with them, as long as they see the issues here and are willing to act on them, perhaps you have an ally. Earlier this year when I talked about how anti-immigrant sentiment was going to pick up and there was going to be more policing like ICE, I also said that we should all be concerned about this because of course we should care about the immigrants in our country and they don't deserve any of this. But these things never stay contained to just one group of people. There's no such thing as, oh, let's take that group's rights and then we'll just be good to everyone else. No, that shit spreads. And I think the next on the agenda is going after leftists. At the moment, I think we have some legal protections against this. I don't think our legal system has completely fallen apart. But this would not be a good thing. It has to be something that we are prepared for. And when we have deportation officials that will take people that are citizens or not and disappear them, this is a real problem and this can get ugly really fast. So I want to be clear that with this upcoming Virgo eclipse, I'm not saying that this is about to happen right on Sunday. But what I do think is that this could be the start of that chapter potentially unfolding. And so it is crucial that we do not sit by and let this happen. Because what we do, as I said in the episode about this season, what we do in these next weeks and months determines what comes next. We cannot make it easy for these fuckers. So please take care of yourself, take care of your community, make sure that you're plugging in and taking care of yourself because this is not going to be done in a week. This will be a global movement, but it starts with being a community movement that branches out and connects with other community movements. And that is how we're going to build the momentum to make the changes that we need to make to put a stop to all of this senseless violence and war that is consuming our planet, that is ruining our environment, that is taking resources away from us. And we could use those resources. We don't need to do all this. It just makes no sense. So on a collective level, my hope is that many of us include in our intentions that we're not going to put up with the bullshit anymore from our governments, right? And I know a lot of us that listen to this podcast probably aren't huge fans of all of the evil stuff that this government and others have done. But set the intention to incorporate resistance into your everyday life, little by little, right? It doesn't have to be that you start a new organization and build it from the ground up, right? We need people showing up in little ways every single day and making it a part of their life. And I think this is a moment where enough of us are looking around, seeing the problem, where we can actually work together on this one. Let this be a launch point for the collective to just say, we're ready to get our hands dirty, because it is very clear that our leadership is not going to handle this for us. So we need to get clear about what roles that we're going to double down on in the next 6 months as we walk into a situation where, again, leaders are trying to control us. They're really trying it, y'all. So how are you taking a stand? How are you drawing lines? What are you going to do differently in these next 6 months? What have you learned from the past 6 months? Don't be so afraid of making mistakes that you choose not to act, because the worst mistake we could make with this new moon is choosing not to do anything at all. And after all we've been through, individually and collectively, I know we're wiser than that. Well, that was my elephant in the room, talking about the eclipse season so far, because I know it has been a lot. I know everybody's tired. I know most of us are lamenting the things that we wanted to do this eclipse season but didn't go quite as planned. And that is kind of the beauty of eclipse season. If you would humor me and try to give it a chance, all right? This is also a time where, because things get so wild, we are really shown what we're capable of. Things get clearer in the chaos somehow. Maybe they're not totally clear, but some things are clarifying. I bet they are. I bet they are. You don't have to love every minute of it. But just know that even difficult transits can give us gifts. I like gifts. I don't know about you. I love gifts. So when I look at astrology, I'm not looking like, oh man, this is bad, or oh, this is good. I mean, some stuff is very obvious, like, wow, world events that day are going to be tough. And because I know too much, I know what those things might be. But I never look at that astrology on a personal level and assume it's going to be bad. And I encourage you to try it out, because the universe will surprise you. The universe will give you gifts even when the world is going to shit. And the important thing is that just because things are tough outside doesn't mean that you need to be having a terrible time all the time. That is part of what this Virgo eclipse is showing us. That not everything is big picture. Not everything is collective, right? And that doesn't mean that we let go of our responsibilities to show up and be parts of our communities, because that would be not so good. That would not help our health and wellness, I'll tell you that. Virgo is about our physical experience, and our physical experience is right now. It's what we can see and smell and touch and taste right in front of us. It's what our hands can reach. And it's important to anchor ourselves in that, given how uncertain things are. That is one of the things I think these Virgo Pisces eclipses are teaching us. We don't have control over what everyone else is doing. There are people running around waiting for the rapture to come at any moment, okay? We aren't in control of that. I wish we were. God damn. But it's hairy out there, y'all. I will never lie to you and tell you, like, it's all good. We have a lot of things that we're being confronted with all at once. And what's interesting about these moments is also there can be unexpected breakthroughs. There can be things that happen that seem bad on their surface that lead to things that are really good, and that conversations that needed to be had a long time ago that now need to be faced. Virgo is very practical energy, you know? How can you heal something you won't acknowledge? Virgo is the energy of the healer. So with this Virgo eclipse, and I'll remind you that it's only an eclipse in like Antarctica and some parts of the South Pacific. So if you are not there, you're technically not having an eclipse. You're having a very powerful new moon. And what I like about eclipses is that they are moments in time where short spans of time can really catapult us a lot further than we thought we might be able to go in such a short time span. So that is kind of why I use the word portal, a word I never really use because I think it's like way abused in the spiritual space. But in this instance, I'll allow it, okay? I think that eclipses are kind of portal-y. So you really want to be intentional with the energy because maybe we can't control every outcome, but we have a lot of agency over where we decide to put our attention and our energy. Where do you apply the skills that you have? And is how you do those things serving you in the long term, serving your spiritual development, your wellness, your ability to find stability in an uncertain world? Virgo is mutable earth, so as much as we're looking for stability, we have to be adaptable, which means that things that you are doing at the beginning of 2025 may not be right for you anymore. Things may have changed. You have different information now than you did back then. So this is about using your wisdom that you have gained through not only the course of your life, but just this last chapter that's been very exciting. Because Virgo has a reputation for getting things done, I think there are a lot of us who may be feeling like we haven't done a good job this Virgo season because over the course of eclipse season, there has been a lot weighing on us, the energy has been a lot, there's a lot on our plates, whatever it may be. It didn't go how you thought it would go. It doesn't look like you think it should. This Virgo new moon is at 29 degrees of Virgo. This is the full maturity of the sign. Instead of looking at all of the negatives, all of the things that are wrong or that you should have done or could have done, like we don't have time for that. I hope by this Virgo eclipse, this Virgo new moon, as compared to the one we had at the beginning of Virgo season, you can see that there are certain things that are pretty urgent to address, right? So we need to be judicious with our energy, and that includes not just piling criticism on ourselves because we can, and understanding that even small steps forward are steps forward. Hello, we have to count that stuff or else we're going to exhaust ourselves. We're going to be over before we even begin because we're going to be like, oh, I can't do that. I don't have anything to contribute. I don't know anything. I'm scared. We don't have time for that. Many things happening in the world right now feel like they're on the razor's edge. So we can't be. We have to find what we can ground ourselves in our daily lives so that we can keep showing up for ourselves and doing the things that are important to us, tending to ourselves, tending to our communities, creating lives that make more sense, that connect us more with our bodies and with our spiritual lives. We need those things to make our dreams come true, to build a better future for the collective. We got to take care of the body, and part of our body is our spiritual body, our emotional body, right? It's not all just the physical, but the physical helps connect us with the fullness of our spiritual selves. It helps us channel all this energy that is flooding through us right now as we all process this uncertainty. We need to take these practices seriously because they're what is going to make this work sustainable. This is a Virgo eclipse, so what better time to be practical? So here's my to-do list for this new moon. 1, review your habits. Make them sustainable. If you're not currently able to meet your physical, emotional, and spiritual needs, set intentions around how you might do that. I know that so many people are under-resourced right now, and so some of this might be asking for help or offering help. If you have time to give, if you have extra resources, look at those things too. It is not sustainable to never ask for help, to always power through and try to handle things on your own. It's probably not sustainable to have skills and resources that you never share either. Reassessing your habits will go a long way to get you through these next 6 eventful months. 2, you also want to use this new moon to make adjustments. So anything in your life, including your habits, do not be afraid to make modifications. I would recommend making a lot of lists around this time and use that information about what you want, what you need to prioritize your energy. It's a finite resource, and there are a lot of people invested in taking up our energy and holding our focus on what they want us to focus on. Oh, look at this big news story. And not to say that you shouldn't stay informed, but we can't spend all of our time on information gathering that doesn't really have any impact on the physical actions that we need to take in our life. That includes mutual aid and community organizing and the things that are going to get us through this moment and out of fascism. Virgo energy can be a ruthless editor, and you want to use the wisdom that you've gained to get rid of the things that are taking time away from whatever the work you're here on Earth to do is. Set boundaries around your energy over the next 6 months, and it is really going to pay off. Lastly, use this new moon to anchor yourself in your rituals and spiritual foundations. So whatever that means for you. The things that we do every day, whether it's making that cup of coffee, doing our stretches, taking a walk, whatever it is that we do is a ritual. Think about how those rituals are supporting you or not, because you need to find the things that are going to anchor you to your physical experience, that are going to connect you with your spiritual understanding, because these are the things that are going to allow us to physically and emotionally move through the next 6 months. We don't want to wing it because we don't have to. We can support ourselves. That is the wisdom of this new moon. We know well enough that we can take care of ourselves. Even if it's tough, we've been doing it. Even if it's tough, we've been doing it. Remind yourself of that. It does not have to be perfect. It just has to get done. And I know people love to talk about Virgo perfectionism, but that is not realistic because most Virgos know that circumstances are usually not going to be up to their standards and they're just going to have to roll with it. It won't be perfect. It's not going to all go smoothly. You're not going to do every single habit perfectly, make every adjustment exactly the way you imagined. And that's okay. What's important is that you keep doing it. That's how you get better. That's how you build habits that work for you, is that you just keep working on it. And then you get somewhere. Establish rituals that connect you with your mind and with your body and with your spirit. And understand that those are needs and not afterthoughts. These are the things that are going to sustain us as we move through these times. The things that will feel familiar to fall back on those days where the news is really loud or the world feels very heavy. It's not about perfection, but it is about creating a sense of refuge and safety in our own bodies. And what could be more helpful than that? If you want to hear more about this Virgo eclipse and how you can take advantage of the new moon to manifest based on where it's happening in your astrology chart, I'll be hosting Petty Astrology live Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific over on Twitch, and you're invited. If you can't make it to the live show, as always, sponsors of this podcast get the replay every time. You can join us over on Patreon for just $5 a month. You get access to bonus episodes, you get to vote on future bonus episodes, and more. And you support a growing community that is not subject to algorithms or ownership by billionaires. That's right. And with the changes coming to TikTok, I think it's a good idea that regardless of where you choose to find community on the internet, that you go find that community. You can join the Petty Astrology community for free, also on Patreon. Anyways, if you're not in Patreon, why the fuck not, okay? Things are getting hairy out there. We can't speak as freely as we want to, and that is why we need spaces that are more our own. One thing you should add to your Virgo eclipse to-do list is making sure that you're not dependent on legacy social media to stay in contact with the people, the creators, and the communities that are important to you. If you haven't already, make sure you check out my Pluto and Aquarius episode on censorship, where I talk about my predictions for this very issue. Spoiler alert, there's more of it coming. And if you missed my current events predictions for eclipse season, check out my episode, Eclipse Season Unhinged. I'll link it down below. That's it for this week's episode. Tune in on Patreon for even more petty astrology. This episode was written and edited by me, Kaycee Felton-Lui. It was produced by Tony Penne. The podcast artwork is by Max Swanson. The music by Paul Schneider. This episode was brought to you by my sponsors over on Patreon.